Uh, Good evening to all of you. Dr. Manoj Patel, the President of Rotary Club of Bombay West, Program Chair Ashok Devraji, Secretary Hima Dalal, my friend Rajul, the moderator Aslam Bhai Merchant, Rotarians from 15 different clubs, Rotaractors, Interactors, Rotarians, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed an honor for me to be able to be amidst all of you and share my experience, my thoughts, and whatever I learned about the education in some of the key countries. When Rajul and Ashok Devraji invited me to speak on this subject, overseas education, I was quite reluctant. And I told Devraji that, this is a company we run, Ascent, and it's a startup, a technology-oriented company. And I don't want anyone to feel that Priyanka and I are promoting Ascent. But they insisted that we know how you would handle it, you know how you would know what to do, and we still want you to speak on this. So that's how I agreed. Well, I think I also have one more qualification apart from becoming a chairman of Ascent that makes me talk on overseas education. And that is, as you've heard, both my daughters have studied in the US, undergrad and grad. In fact, my younger daughter, Devangi, even did her high school there, right, 9th onwards. And Priyanka did her 11th and 12th also at the Princeton School. So having had that exposure, I have been familiar with education outside India for a very, very long time. So then if I were to just begin with, why did I choose for my daughter Priyanka? Because when we took her to the US to study from 11th, at that point of time, I don't think she had really opted for it. She asked for it, but it was my strong conviction. And when I saw her studying for 10th exam, and of course she did exceedingly well, whatever a few percent above 90 that she got. But I was very put off by the examination system of India. That there's so much burden on a student. 10th and 12th will be even worse. I have myself gone through the exams of CA. And I thought these high pressure exams are avoidable. And therefore, why not look at education where such pressure is not there and where one studies through the year and when it tested through the year. That's how really the thought came. So if you see, the studying abroad is not a new thing. I mean, we have documented evidence of 130 plus years where people have been going. A lot of our leading scientists, political leaders, including Mahatma Gandhi, and many other freedom fighters have studied abroad. If we look at recent years, most of the students go for STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And some of the shining examples who've gone from India and became CEOs of global giants, technology companies like Satya Nadella of Microsoft and Sundar Pichai of Google. That's the opportunity our bright Indian students can have. Today, after China, India is the second largest source of intake for the foreign universities. With 60 crore plus people below the age of 25, we can only see more and more people going, more and more youngsters going abroad to study. So why do students opt to go, and why is there so much rush? As we all know, of course, the opportunity to work after study and also accessing the job market and earning capacity to be increased. There are a lot of other benefits. One really grows in personality. One studies at the campus, meets students of different cultures, religions, and really grows into a global citizen. How does one choose a university? There could be many criteria. One could be prestige. One may want to go for a very highly ranked university. The other could be experience, that you want to be in a university which creates a very nice experience in the campus, and one enjoys being there, one learns, one grows. There can be value courses that, with the fees are reasonable. There could be destinations where you could get high value at lower cost. And that could also be that somebody's brother, sister, family members are there in that destination. One chooses that particular destination. Though I don't greatly like that. I think one should choose what really one wants to do, rather than where the relative or a neighbor or a uncle, aunt is living. Essentially, the students go to largest number go to 5 destinations. That UK, Australia, New Zealand, US, and Canada. So let me briefly explain these 5 places and what are the characteristics of these 5 destinations, and why do students choose them, or why should one, how does one evaluate these? So to begin with UK, we had about 35,000 students that went to UK last year. And we were expecting this number to go up substantially this year, but for the COVID situation. So UK, of course, all these 5 destinations, you'll find that English language is prevalent. These are advanced countries where the industry and business have grown well, and there are work opportunities that would come. So coming back to UK, I feel particularly after Brexit, and now that the 2 years of post-study work is restored, which was discontinued earlier, this becomes a very attractive destination. And also post-Brexit, the job opportunities are excellent, because it is no more a priority for Europeans. Also, it's a very cost-effective destination. One can do masters in just 1 year, and then post-study work of 2 years. So one can earn in those 2 years what one has spent during that 1 year. Also, a lot of parents want the children to come back in a shorter time and join business or whatever reason. And 1 year is something that can easily be spared. Also, in terms of permanent residence and the job, after this 2 years of post-study work, one can, of course, apply for a job. There are a lot of categories that are listed, which are skilled work visa that one can get by getting a job. And after 5 years of being in a job, one can apply for permanent residence, PR. Also, UK is a very university-oriented education system. And to quite an extent, initially, India's system also is based on UK. But of course, UK system has changed and has gone way ahead of what we had inherited in India, and definitely become far more advanced in terms of technology and in many other ways, in terms of method of teaching. Another very popular destination is Australia. Australia particularly is attractive to students because it's a very PR-friendly country in terms of becoming permanent residents. The 8 universities which are top are called a group of 8 universities, which are among the largest and the oldest universities in Australia and also globally well known. They're ranked among the top 150 universities globally. The post-study work in Australia particularly is attractive. If one studies outside of Melbourne and Sydney, one can get 3 years of post-study work, and Sydney, Melbourne, one can get 2 years. And there are opportunities, multiple fields. As you know, Australia is a very vast country, limited population, high employment, and standard of living extremely good, earning also pretty good. So it's a very good destination to be able to get job. The the region one selects, as I said, is important, and it will make sense to be even outside Melbourne if one wants to be secured for 3 years for post-work. Also, during the university days also, one can get part-time job. One can work for 20 hours per week. There are good destinations like Perth, Gold Coast, Adelaide, which are outside of Sydney, Melbourne, where one can study. Once work starts and one is in a proper job, particularly if the job is in the same field in which one has studied, then one can start looking at a permanent residence. And that is pretty clear, unambiguous. One has to just reach 65 points. The table is very clear. And when one believes that I've reached the 65 point, then one can apply for permanent residence and get that. Quite often students after 2 to 3 years of work are succeeding in being able to get permanent residence. Also, there are wide variety of courses that one can do in Australia. Doesn't have to be only engineering and MBA. MBA, of course, is well-known. MBA, engineering are there, of course, but even pharmacy and nursing course there is quite popular. Sports management and physiotherapy is also popular. In fact, some of the best physiotherapists in the world are from Australia. New Zealand comes quite close to Australia, very similar in many ways. Still, it has not attracted a very large number of students. I think about 9,000-10,000 students have been going to New Zealand from India. Basically, there are just 8 universities there, which are, again, excellent among the top 100 in at least one of the subjects, 7 out of these 8 universities. Apart from these universities, are institutes of technology and polytechnics, which are also pretty good in quality. The New Zealand education system is greatly influenced by UK education system. Living in New Zealand is, again, a lot of outdoor, as you know. All those who've gone there on a holiday know what a beautiful country it is. It's extremely safe and peaceful, ranked second globally in terms of safety and peace. A very tolerant democracy, diverse culture. The PhD students get very attractive deal. They're allowed to work full time. They have to pay same fees as the locals. So it's a very, very attractive destination for PhD students. Work after graduation is also quite liberal. One can work for 3 years. And then, of course, one can get work visa and also apply for permanent residence after 2-3 years of work. One particular thing to note about New Zealand is there is a very wide variety, wide diversity of courses, more than most other countries, and choice of occupation also is very diverse. New Zealand is a very popular destination in India, from particularly Punjab and Kerala. Again, quite popular for pharmacy, nursing, health science, and public health. Also, those who are interested in early childhood education and teaching also, it's an excellent destination. Lot of jobs available there, apart from, of course, accounting and engineering there. Then let me come to US, the land of opportunities. 4,500 universities, public and private, massive education infrastructure, bigger than any other country in the world. It's so huge, big choice of 4,500 universities that even Google can get confused. Majority of students go there again for STEM. Some of the best ranked universities in the world are in US. Extreme diversity of culture at the campuses, religion, color, nationality, ethnicity, unparalleled anywhere in the world. Academic flexibility is huge. You can select a major toward the end of the 2-year term. One can choose subjects which are not typical of that faculty that one has chosen. One can be in engineering and also have elective of economics or a language. The work after graduation is called OPT, optional practical training, which is there for 2 years, typical 12-month, extendable by another 12 months. And then one has to get H1B, which we all know, we've been reading in media. That's a lottery system. One has to get the right job, above certain salary, and succeed in getting H1B. That's the key. Otherwise, one has to return. And if one is in a job, then after a few years meeting certain criteria, one can apply for green card, which is the permanent residence in US. Canada, another very popular destination, again attractive for permanent residents. English and French, 2 languages, but English is all over. Many top-ranked universities there. One of the coldest countries, but among the warmest people. So it would balance. Fees and cost of living are lower than many European countries. And a lot of colleges are there, like universities, which are vocationally designed, verticalized, and offer very, very high quality education. Some are as good as our top engineering schools in India. One can work for 3 years after graduation if one has done a 2-year course there. And there is a very interesting path to residency. There is an express program, express entry as it is called, by qualifying for it in just 1 year. So that's broadly the picture on the 5 most popular destinations, as well as the broad picture of study abroad. And just to sum up, I would believe, I have a very strong conviction that sending children abroad for higher education, whether undergrad or grad or high school, is an individual choice of the family. But that would create an all-round personality development of a child. One would grow in that environment. Campus life is worth experiencing. One would meet, study, work with people of different nationalities. One would learn so much from them, and one would only grow as an individual, as a person. And that is so invaluable, and one can earn more than the fees one is paid, but the experience that one has gained is clearly priceless. And therefore, I would have no hesitation recommending that, given a choice, and of course, why only say if one can afford, the easy loans also available for studying abroad. And parents have to just let children go. Sometimes their anxiety is what will happen, whether a son or daughter will do anything wrong, this, that. But I would say, just to sum up, once a child is trusted, that trust is more powerful than anything else that one can have, even within India. So I think it's a great opportunities. One could have the child study in an institution where huge investments have been made in creating infrastructure in terms of not just physical, but also world-class faculty, syllabus, and build one's future. So it's a life-changing experience, not just education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Atulji. I think you are a strong believer of brain drain. Now in India, that means only senior citizens are going to remain.
Well, one can come back. I mean, we have so many
That's right.
People coming back, even in middle age, to return to India. They want to come back, work here, want to be in their own countries. So certainly, and a lot of industrialist children who studied abroad have returned. Just that there should be the right opportunity. That's all.
So our only hope is that we built India in such a way that rather than brain drain, the brain comes here. So I think that should be the hope, and that should be a better thing. Now I would request Priyanka ji to question her father as usual.
We've been getting some wonderful questions from the group. So there is a long list actually of questions to go through. The first question that people are asking is about placement opportunities post-COVID. So how has COVID changed people's placement opportunities in different countries? So broadly on this point, I would say that the economy was already very strong pre-COVID. We had a strong economy. There were a lot of jobs. There was a lot of demand. There is a reframing that's happening right now, but a course that you would take on right now would take 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, depending on the course that you're taking up. So by the time that you graduate from that course, the economy is anyway going to be in a different place. So, developed countries are going to bounce back really quickly. The developing countries will also bounce back. So what I would say is the placement opportunities are there. They will continue to grow. So you should continue to use this time to develop skills. Related question to skill development is what would you say are the main areas of growth? What are the fields that one should consider studying? Now, this is an interesting question because if you think about it, right now, technology, for example, is booming. It is really leading the way in terms of the recovery, in terms of the shift that is happening now with like online working, remote working, companies gearing up to serve this post-COVID more online world, right? But with that in mind, technology is no longer a one-dimensional field. It's no longer that, oh, you study computer science and therefore you get a job in technology. It's in technology itself, you can have a sales role if you pursue something along the lines of psychology, if you're a persistent person. You could have a STEM MBA person who is managing a team of technology professionals. So technology now is no longer a skill set. It is an industry. You have to figure out your skill set and your strengths for what kind of role you want to play within this industry. The other point on technology roles is that, as the industry matures, the senior leadership at all of these companies, it's no longer going to be just the person that built the product, right? It's going to be the people that can manage public relations, the people that can manage relationships with the government. It's going to be the people that can have many different facets to the role that they play. So you have to pursue your strengths, your individual strengths, to figure out the role that you want to play. So that's the larger point on technology. The next question I got, this is an interesting one, on MOOCs. So these are the massively open online courses. And the question is it worth it to take a MOOC or not? I think this is an interesting question because some people look at MOOCs as the future of education, and some people look at it as the downfall of education, depending on the point of view. So these are these courses that, for example, MIT and a lot of other colleges now have opened up, where the lecturers share their audio and video content, all their class notes, all of the class recordings online. And anyone can enroll for these courses. Now, the question though, I would ask back is, what is your goal from taking the course? This is a great way to learn a new subject, to demonstrate your interest in a topic for a future employer, to show, to get started with either going deeper into a field or learning about a new field. At the same time, you have to be aware that MOOCs are not, you're not going to get feedback on this, on your work on it. It's really about your self-discipline in terms of what you actually learn from it, whether you actually follow through on the assignments or not. There's not going to be anyone really checking on you. So you can get a lot out of an MOOC depending on what you give into the MOOC. And just quickly going back to the chat, there are so many questions here. Now, the next question that we've got is about university rankings. Which university ranking should one consider while deciding on the college or the universities? So there are so many kinds of rankings. In fact, I think we need a ranking of rankings to say which is the right ranking to use. So what I would say about rankings is that you really have to pay attention to the methodology behind the ranking. What is it that they're actually ranking for? Sometimes they're ranking for, what is the percentage of time that faculty spends on, research versus teaching. Sometimes they're ranking for what percentage of the students are in a certain demographic in the US. So the rankings can be very specialized. What I would say is that you can look at rankings for prestige. In that case, you can look at, you have to know what your goal is, right? So if you're looking for rankings for prestige, you want to say, okay, this is in the top 10 in different rankings, that works. If you want to look at rankings for pure academic, quality, there are some fairly one-dimensional rankings. For example, the Shanghai ranking gives the most weightage to just the academic quality. And counselors can help you figure out affordability, alumni salary, internships, and jobs. The Financial Times ranking gives the most weightage to like prestige. So you can figure out how you would like to think about that. Papa, is there something you would like to add to this?
On the ranking side, if I have to add, I personally feel there shouldn't be over-obsession on ranking. I think from India particularly, students are quite obsessed about the prestige of the university and how well-known it is. I may sound less credible when both my daughters have studied at Ivy colleges, but I've learned there. I've learned from that as well as from many experiences over a period of time that there are 100 outstanding universities in America, maybe 200 to 300 outstanding universities. Why only a few? And there are many more which are quite good universities. Same is the case in Canada, Australia, UK. I don't think one should have the over obsession of wanting to go only to some XYZ university. I think by and large, the infrastructure is pretty good. The faculty is good. Is the experience that one gets, it is amazing. And I think one should see what is the match between the two, the student and the university. Now, as I said sometime back, sometimes with so many universities, so many courses, even Google can get confused. And I think that needs artificial intelligence to be able to match the two in reality. And I'm not boasting about my own company, Ascent, but we've launched with an AI platform, and we are working on a very advanced level platform, because it is so difficult even for a consultant or a counselor to match the two in view of the wide choice of courses prevalent. But I can say that if one removes this obsession of ranking, one can choose a very fine university where one can be quite happy studying. In fact, if I were to quote Kanwal Rekhi, very famous, successful technology entrepreneur in US, well known from Silicon Valley, and he built Novell, which was a pioneer in networking solutions. He's an IITian, and he was addressing a gathering in India, and he said, look, the top 100 universities have better facilities than IIT, better syllabus than IIT, just that our students are very bright, and therefore they're shining out as IITians. So I would say that one can have a wide choice on that, even beyond ranking, in short.
Thank you. That's a really good reminder to all of us, really, right? It's about matching, and it's about your own goals and where are you the most likely to do well, not just about the ranking of the university. Some people have asked questions about the cost of studying for different types of courses and different types of programs. So roughly undergraduate degrees in the US are between 45,000 and 55,000 roughly. But what I would say here, I just want to add that there's related questions on scholarships and loans. So a scholarship it's basically a discount on the tuition, right? It's a reduction of the tuition. So there are merit-based scholarships available in the US and in really every destination. There are several merit-based scholarships. In addition to the merit-based scholarship, you can also get an assistantship, which will help you pay for your degree, your living expenses. So there are many ways to reduce the net overall cost based on that. The next set of questions, I think there are some very...
Let me address on CA. Being a chartered accountant myself, let me address that. In different countries, like if one wants to go to US, then one will have to do CPA. One can even study for CPA in India and give the exam in Singapore and then go to US, or one can just go to US and study CPA. And as a chartered accountant from India, I would believe that it's easier to do CPA than a CA in India. One can do CA in UK or Australia, which are very similar to India, while CPA is to an extent different, but the Commonwealth countries would have a lot of similarities in what CA program will be. Same thing for law. I mean, US again will be different. Law, of course, each country will have its own specific law. There will also be international law one can study. But particularly one studies law in Australia or UK, I think that would be clearly relevant, even if one were to come back to India. And otherwise, one can practice there in a chosen field. In Australia, particularly, since the question was the Master of Professional Accounting in Australia is a quite popular program, Master of Professional Accounting. And then one can take up a job or practice or even return to India and make use of the education in that.
Okay, then the next set of questions is around how many years does it take for a master's degree in the US in the IT field? So most courses are 2 years for a master's degree in the IT field. The next question that we have here is about permanent residencies and what role does that play in your college choices? So that actually, I would ask straight back to you, which is this really depends on your goals, right? If you have the goal of studying abroad, but then coming back to India, then you can be clear on that, and then you can choose a destination based on that. If you are clear that you want to be somewhere else, then sure, it should play a role. I think the larger point here is that sometimes we think of college as this end goal, right? Like this is what we have to prepare for. I have to prepare to go to get my degree, and we spend years and years preparing for how to get that right degree. But then what? So many times students finish their degree and they're like, but what happens next? So the more important way of looking at this, and I think the more helpful way of looking at this, is to say, okay, who am I? What are my strengths? What are my goals in life? And then let's figure out which university will help me achieve those goals. Is this going to be a university in the US? Is this going to be a university in Australia? It really is going to depend on your life goals. We have a 9th grader on the call who said that she is leaning towards arts and specifically English literature. Wonderful, Dishita, welcome to this session. That's great that you want to study arts and English literature. A liberal arts education, which one can get at many excellent liberal arts colleges all over the world, really, can help you be more well-rounded. People that have studied English literature don't necessarily end up having to be writers after they finish. There are many career options available. A good writer is a good communicator, and you can do many things with that skill. The next question is about someone who wants to go to Canada for their postgrad and has got admission for the January intake in 2021. But is hesitant because of online courses. So this question about online versus in-person learning, it's a question that many of our students are thinking about right now, right? Online courses are, when we're signing up for college, people are signing up for the experience of being physically there and getting the learning. But this is also a one-on-one decision that you would have to make based on your goals for after, right? Is it worth it to you to defer and wait? And you lose 6 months on the other end, that's 6 months away from getting that job of your dreams. Or is it something that you want to get started with right now? Because, COVID isn't going to last forever. And you can get started with the courses, and as soon as you can physically be on campus, you can be there. So we are advising each student based on their individual situation right now on that. There are some questions on studying in Singapore. So Singapore has some excellent universities. Like it has very good public universities. It has a lot of private colleges. Public universities are very competitive, so you need good grades to get in. You have also, currently in Singapore, especially post-COVID, because they are I mean, they've handled it beautifully. They are open. The universities are in, there's a lot of emphasis on like following rules, hygiene, security, safety. So it is a destination that is currently very popular. It is just, it's very competitive because you need good grades to get into the best universities. You can also, it's also good, good location. It's close to India, but yet it is international. It has good job prospects as well. Let's see. Next question. I'm just going through the list.
So while Priyanka is looking at more questions, let me add a little to what I had already said earlier about all of us becoming more and more global. And that is one important advantage of studying abroad. Like today, I'm sitting in Dubai and talking to you all. Priyanka is settled in New York and she's talking from New York. All of you are in Mumbai. I live in Mumbai, of course, but for some time I'm here in Dubai. So I think the world is changing. It's becoming just one, no matter where one is. And particularly with the video conferencing that has become a fact of life, people will be working from anywhere, and work from home could be anywhere in the world. So I think it's all the more reason to, it doesn't matter where you study, but it's important to have global perspective. It could even be in India, but it's important to have global perspective. There's one more question I want to take up is whether one should go to the US after, for undergrad or for grad program. So this is, I have my own personal conviction, and that is, I personally believe that one should go for undergrad. If, of course, it has become much higher cost, and unlike a grad program, when you quickly start earning after that, after just 1 year in UK or 2 years in US, in undergrad, one studies for 4 years. So there is an investment going up to 4 years, but in between internship programs in good companies, true campus life one can experience. And so that is what I believed in. And I would say one should do both undergrad and grad, but at least one should do grad outside India and gain that exposure. Then one can have both education in India, live with family, and then go up overseas for a grad program. Priyanka, you want to add anything out of your experience?
It's very difficult, I can see as a parent, to say, okay, my child is, just like 17 years old, 18 years old. I'm going to send them off to this foreign country, and how will it go? But I have to say that from my personal experience, from seeing the experience of everyone that, I was at college with and over the years, it was life-changing in the sense that you really learn how to be independent. You learn how to take care of yourself and juggle schoolwork with making sure you have good work ethic and routines. There's no one to tell you, have you done your homework? There's no one to say, wake up to go to class. You're there, So I think that the work ethic that I developed in those years, the way that I learned how to be self-driven, has impacted my life beyond just the academics of what I studied and what I learned as an undergraduate. So if that is, if budget-wise, because it is a 4-year program rather than a 2-year program, if that is something that you are considering, I would strongly encourage you to, I'm a big believer that it will give life skills that will affect your child in the long term, which is wonderful. There are some questions there was a question on physiotherapy, which is, physiotherapy graduates are finding it very attractive. Actually, physiotherapy, psychology, all of these non-medical degree but health-related fields are doing exceptionally well these days. So, if your child or you have an inclination for, helping people in the physical fitness, in the health-related fields, definitely pursue that. UK job
I would
opportunity.
add to what Priyanka said, in physiotherapy, good destinations would be Australia and New Zealand. And physiotherapy as well as sports management in New Zealand are pretty good destinations.
Then there is a question on UK hospitality management course. There are a lot of opportunities in the UK in all of these fields, and now there's an extension also that's available. London is offering this 2-year extension via the graduate immigration route after the completion of the degree. So that's helpful in getting jobs. In hospitality as a field currently is, because of COVID, going through a tough time. But if it is something that you are passionate about, this would be a good time to get your degree in the field, so that by the time there is an upswing, and there will be eventually, you are ready to get placement there. The next question is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity in the UK is also very popular. Same with data analytics, very popular, both of them. Okay, let's see, more questions. There's some questions on dance courses. That's also interesting. I'm loving seeing how everyone here is thinking beyond just, do you want to be a doctor or engineer? It's like there's so much scope. So for dance courses, I would look at London, New York, Singapore. Sports management, what specific qualifications are required? It is beneficial to have some experience in sports management. It's beneficial to have some, some experience with the sports field in order to qualify. But you can work with a counselor and figure out how to do that. For architecture, UK and Europe are really good places to look for architecture courses. But one would have to talk, sort of broadly, one would have to talk more specifically. Early childhood courses. Actually, early childhood is in high demand in many parts of the world. And, yes, there is good scope. And having a background in early childhood also gives you a lot of possibilities. It's not just the teaching, but it's also working one-on-one with kids in different ways. So definitely there is scope for earnings. There is a
Also,
skill
Priyanka,
yeah,
while you continue answering, but just in the meantime,
yeah.
I don't think you'll be able to respond to all the questions. So would it be okay for anyone to connect with you through email? Can you just explain that so that...
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to send my email address right now to the group. It's priyanka@azent.com. So please do feel free to email me. I'm trying to get through as many questions as possible right now, but definitely we will not be able to cover all of them. So my email is priyanka.
In fact, I'm saying because, Priyanka has been guiding a lot of students who want to study abroad for many years now. It's not just because of Azent, but she has been doing that for a long time. So feel free if anyone has any personal level she can handle. Doesn't have to be company level. It's just personal level. Priyanka can handle and give personal view and advice, and more than happy to help. It's simple, priyanka@azent.com.
Absolutely. I would love to help. Actually, when I worked at NYU, I used to do, I was part of the admissions committee. And over there, I used to conduct information sessions and do tours. And so this is not just about, Ascent. Yes, of course, if there's something related to Ascent that we can help you with, I'd be happy to. But this is just also something that I love to connect with people, and I'd love to just talk. Last couple of, I know we're running close to the end of our time. We have about 5 minutes left, and it is hard to get through all of these questions in the last few minutes. Let's see if we can do a quick speed round. So GRE, GMAT are more of American exams. Some Canadian and German universities also look for these scores, but exceptions are possible. And particularly these days, some universities and colleges have made tests optional, or they've delayed, they will give a conditional of after you can take the test because of COVID reasons. There is a question for data analytics. Yes, London is definitely a good option with job opportunities in the data analytics field. Let's see, what are the... Since COVID issue may last for long, is there any such change in education policies abroad? For this question, see, universities all over the world are really dependent on international students. I think we have to look at this from the point of view of universities and colleges also. International students are a big component of their financial budget as well. And they are also a big part of campus life. Universities are delivering an experience that is not just academic, that is there to prepare students for the world, right? So there might be some of a delayed start, but universities really are committed to helping their international students come on board. And, they're also figuring it out as they go, but they are definitely making their policies with the point of view of making sure that international students can attend and get a lot out of the program. I wonder if this might actually
In fact,
be a good...
if you look at US, Australia, Canada, UK, they earn foreign exchange of $40-50 billion every year from overseas students. So students are welcome, overseas students. Indians are even more welcome today, more so because of the China situation. Chinese students are more than Indians in most of these countries, in fact, all these countries. And the universities would want to balance the two, Chinese and Indians. So I think we could not have had a better time in getting admission and also getting job breakthrough, not immediate, but 2 years hence than before. I think, Priyanka, we're done with the questions. I think we'll
I think that's a good place to stop.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Atulji, and thank you, Priyanka. I think only the CBI sessions of questioning goes longer than this. Otherwise, the questions and you have answered them well. So I think it was a beautiful question answer session, and it was a beautiful talk, and it will be useful to many, many young people. Of course, people like us, you will not be exporting, so that doesn't matter. Thank you very much. I request Rotarian Rajan Saxena to propose a vote of thanks.
So, Dr. Patel, I really I'm very grateful to you and all the Rotarians for having given us this opportunity. It was great to interact with all of you. And while thanks to my dear friend Rajul and Devraji that it started, but I would like to thank each and every one of you for making it so participative. We are not expecting, frankly, so many questions and so much participation. And we started getting questions even before the session started, actually. So it was really wonderful and really enjoyable to be with all of you. I wish it was physical and we were all together. I could have enjoyed your hospitality also. But nevertheless, this
Always
was really,
next time.
this was
But
wonderful.
Rajul will never invite.
Manojbhai કંઈક પણ. Atul knows. He's come to my house.
Of course, yes.
So Manojbhai, you may not be invited, but Atul and Priyanka would always be.
Got disconnected for some. I think it is his video is frozen. So
Okay.
let's
Yes.
go over to Dr. Rajan Saxena.
Yes.
Dr. Sab, yeah,
Yeah.
please
Thank
go
you
ahead.
very much. Thank you very much. This is Atul, Nishar, and Priyanka. I must compliment you for such a wonderful session. I think this has been one of the most informative sessions on international education, and especially for all those children and parents who are wanting to send their children for outside India for education. As you very rightly said, Atul, and I think there's a lot of merit in it. As an educator myself, of a very long standing in this country, and not only in this country, but also having taught in North America, I particularly feel very strongly that there is a strong value of global experience, which you very rightly brought out, Atul, and that is something which is invaluable in an international education. And I think it is for that very reason that the Indian students really look for, and that is the reason why parents should really even send their children, because that's the only way that you really become, truly speaking, a global citizen. And that is what both you and Priyanka, both of you were trying to drive across. At the same time, I think the benefit of flexible education, which you talked about, the merit of flexibility in education in a global setting is phenomenal, which cannot be really which cannot be ignored. Indian education has suffered because of the fact that this has been very rigid, as you very rightly said. And so therefore, from that kind of a point of view, it is certainly something which is worthwhile for all to consider. As you also very rightly said, that the selection of the university and the program should never be based on, things like, for example, the ranking and many other kind of things, but it should truly be speaking based on your own interest and what is it that you would want to do in life. And the biggest thing is what kind of life skills you're going to be gaining when you are really there in that kind of in a very, very different world. I think the most important thing is that you learn to live in a global setting, in a world where nobody knows you. Only thing is you're known by what you do there. And that is what makes a big difference. But in the times to come, well, hybrid education is going to be the new norm. And I'm sure that you would agree as an IT man also, that it's going to be a hybrid education. It is not just merely online and perhaps face-to-face. It is going to take some time before really the universities, whether this is the US, Canada, or anywhere else in the world, really get their students back on their campuses. I don't think that it would be that many numbers that would really be there for multiple reasons, as we are all aware about it. But certainly, I think the future really lies in terms of a hybrid education. The future also lies for Indian education getting exported. And I think that is where I think, Priyanka, you will have an opportunity to send the students from all over the world to India and to Indian institutions also. That, I think, is going to be the biggest kind of a contribution that you would be making as a global consultant in admissions. And that, I think, would be one of the biggest kind of a contribution. Thank you very much, Atul and Priyanka, for being over here and being such a wonderful speakers for us. Thank you, all the co-host Rotarians who are present over here. And I must thank you, Dr. Manoj Patel, for giving me this opportunity and even inviting Mr. Atul Nishar.